Imagine a pyramid unlike any other in Egypt, one that crumbled instead of standing tall, one that seems to hold a secret about how the ancient Egyptians built their monuments. The Black Pyramid of Amenemhat III is one of the most mysterious structures in Egypt. Unlike the Great Pyramid of Giza, which has stood for thousands of years, the Black Pyramid collapsed, leaving behind a haunting ruin. But why? Could it be that the Egyptians experimented with a building material we still don't fully understand? Most people assume that all pyramids were made of massive limestone blocks, carefully cut and stacked. However, the Black Pyramid tells a different story. Built during the Middle Kingdom, this pyramid was not made from solid stone, but from mud brick, a material that was far weaker. Over time, it couldn't support the weight of the structure, causing the pyramid to deteriorate. But some researchers suggest there may be more to the story. Could the Egyptians have used a type of ancient concrete? Were they testing out new construction techniques that modern science has yet to uncover? In this deep dive, we'll explore the history of the Black Pyramid, the materials used to build it, and the theories surrounding its mysterious collapse. Did the Egyptians possess knowledge of an advanced building material, lost to time? Or was this simply a failed experiment in construction? Rising from the sands of Dashur, the Black Pyramid of Amenemhat III is one of Egypt's most puzzling structures. Built around 1850 before Christ, during the Middle Kingdom, this pyramid was meant to serve as the final resting place of Pharaoh Amenemhat III. Unlike the famous pyramids of Giza, which have endured for millennia, the Black Pyramid has collapsed into a jagged heap of ruins. Its unusual state has led many to wonder, what made this pyramid so different? At the time of its construction, Egypt was undergoing significant changes. The Old Kingdom, known for its grand stone pyramids, had ended centuries earlier, and the Middle Kingdom pharaohs sought new ways to build. Rather than using solid limestone, as seen in earlier pyramids, Amenemhat III's engineers relied heavily on mud brick, a mix of clay, straw, and silt from the Nile. This decision was likely made for economic and logistical reasons, as mud brick was easier to produce and transport. However, it also made the pyramid far less durable. Despite its fragile core, the Black Pyramid was originally a magnificent sight. It stood about 75 meters, 246 feet tall, and was encased in smooth limestone, reflecting the sun like a beacon. Inside, a complex network of passageways and chambers housed the pharaoh's burial chamber, complete with intricate security measures to thwart tomb robbers. Unlike previous pyramids, the Black Pyramid also contained multiple burial chambers, possibly for the pharaoh's queens. But something went wrong. Over time, the weight of the structure caused it to crack and sink, leading to its slow collapse. Today, it stands as a ruined reminder of a bold but flawed architectural experiment. Was the failure simply due to poor material choice? Or was there an unknown factor at play? To understand the mystery of the Black Pyramid, we need to look at how Egyptian pyramids were built throughout history. The materials used changed over time, affecting the strength and longevity of each structure. While the pyramids of the Old Kingdom, like those at Giza, were built using massive limestone and granite blocks, later pyramids took a different approach, one that may have led to the downfall of the Black Pyramid. During the Old Kingdom, pharaohs built pyramids designed to last for eternity. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, for example, was constructed using an estimated 2.3 million limestone blocks, some weighing several tons. These heavy stones were carefully stacked and locked together, allowing the structure to remain standing for over 4,500 years. The interiors of these pyramids often included granite, a material even harder and more durable than limestone, used to protect burial chambers. By the Middle Kingdom, however, Egypt faced economic difficulties, and large-scale stone construction became more challenging. Instead of using solid stone, builders started using mud brick, a mixture of clay, sand, straw, and water, which was shaped into bricks and left to dry in the sun. While much cheaper and easier to work with, mud brick was far less durable than solid stone. To compensate, architects covered these pyramids with limestone casing, giving them a strong outer shell while keeping the core lightweight. The Black Pyramid followed this Middle Kingdom method, relying on mud brick for its core and limestone for its outer casing. However, the sheer size of the structure may have been too much for mud brick to support. Over time, cracks formed, and without the limestone casing, later removed by stone robbers, the pyramid collapsed. Did the Egyptians simply make a mistake in material choice? Or were they attempting something new, possibly experimenting with an unknown substance? Some researchers believe the answer lies in an alternative theory, one that suggests the Egyptians may have used an early form of concrete or synthetic stone. The Black Pyramid stands out from others in Egypt not just because of its ruined state, but because of how it was built. Unlike the solid stone pyramids of the Old Kingdom, this structure relied on mud brick as its primary material. But why would the Egyptians move away from the sturdy limestone that had made their earlier pyramids last for thousands of years? One possible explanation is cost and efficiency. By the time of the Middle Kingdom, Egypt was not as wealthy as it had been during the age of the Great Pyramids. Transporting massive limestone blocks was expensive and labor-intensive, so architects looked for a cheaper and faster alternative. Mud brick was abundant, easy to produce, and significantly lighter than solid stone. By covering the mud brick core with an outer layer of limestone, the Egyptians could maintain the appearance of a grand stone pyramid without the extreme costs. However, this material choice came with serious problems. Unlike solid limestone, mud brick is highly vulnerable to moisture. The Black Pyramid was built in an area where underground water levels were higher than expected. Over time, this moisture weakened the mud brick core, causing the structure to shift, crack, and eventually collapse under its own weight. Interestingly, despite its structural failure, the interior design of the Black Pyramid was highly advanced. It contained one of the most complex internal layouts of any pyramid, with a maze-like network of corridors, false passages, and hidden chambers designed to protect the pharaoh's tomb. The burial chamber itself was made from solid granite and suspended within the structure to keep it secure. This suggests that while the builders took risks with their materials, they were still highly skilled in engineering and tomb security. But was the collapse simply a mistake in material choice? Or were the Egyptians testing out a new kind of construction technique, one that modern archaeologists still don't fully understand? Some experts believe the Black Pyramid may hold evidence of a lost building method, possibly involving an early form of concrete. Could the Egyptians have been ahead of their time, using a material that has since been forgotten? The collapse of the Black Pyramid raises an intriguing question. Did the Egyptians experiment with a building material that modern science has yet to fully understand? While mainstream archaeology attributes its failure to the use of mud brick, some researchers believe there could be more to the story. Could the Egyptians have developed an early form of concrete or synthetic stone? One of the most well-known theories comes from French scientist Joseph Davidovits, who suggests that some of Egypt's pyramids, including possibly the Black Pyramid, were built using a geopolymer limestone concrete rather than carved stone blocks. According to his hypothesis, the Egyptians may have poured a limestone-based slurry into molds, letting it harden into solid blocks. This method would have made construction significantly easier, eliminating the need for laborers to drag multi-ton stone blocks across the desert. So, What's the evidence that the Egyptians might have used an early form of concrete? Well, some researchers point to chemical analysis of pyramid stones. Certain samples contain microscopic air bubbles and unusual chemical compositions, signs that suggest the stones may have been poured rather than carved. And then there's the way some blocks fit together. Unlike natural limestone, these blocks seem to almost fuse with each other, with no visible tool marks. Could this mean they weren't carved at all, but instead molded in place? But not everyone is convinced. Critics argue that most pyramid stones show clear signs of traditional quarrying, with tool marks that match ancient Egyptian methods. They also point out that the chemical differences in these stones could be the result of natural weathering over thousands of years, not evidence of artificial stone. And here's a big one. There's no direct proof of this technique. No inscriptions, no tools, no records describing a concrete-like process. So, was this an ancient engineering breakthrough, or just a misunderstanding of how these stones aged over time? That's the big question. Some alternative theories suggest that the Egyptians may have experimented with different binding agents, mixing materials like gypsum, crushed limestone, or even organic compounds to reinforce their mud bricks. If true, this could mean that the Black Pyramid wasn't just a failed experiment, but part of an innovative attempt to find new ways of building. Additionally, there have been modern reconstructions attempting to test these theories. Some engineers and chemists have successfully created geopolymer stones similar to limestone using methods that could have been available to the ancient Egyptians. If proven true, this would rewrite history, showing that the Egyptians may have been the first civilization to invent concrete, more than 2,000 years before the Romans, who are traditionally credited with its invention. So, was the Black Pyramid simply a failed mud brick structure? Or was it part of a larger experiment, one that tested new materials and construction techniques? The debate continues, but if the Egyptians did discover a lost method of construction, the Black Pyramid could be the missing link in understanding how they built their greatest monuments. All right, so we've explored the idea that the Egyptians might have used an unknown material, maybe even an early form of concrete. But what does mainstream archaeology say? Is there solid evidence that proves the Black Pyramid was built with only traditional materials? Most Egyptologists argue that there's no real mystery here. The Black Pyramid's collapse wasn't due to some lost technology. It was simply poor material choice. Unlike the Great Pyramids of the Old Kingdom, which were made of heavy limestone blocks, the Black Pyramid was built with mud brick, a material that just wasn't strong enough to support a structure of that size. Over time, the weight of the pyramid caused cracks, and eventually, the whole thing started to fall apart. Add in groundwater erosion, and it was a recipe for disaster. But what about the so-called evidence of artificial stone? Experts say that while some pyramid blocks do have an unusual texture or chemical composition, this can be explained by natural weathering and mineral changes over thousands of years. In other words, it's not proof that the Egyptians were pouring concrete. It's just the result of time doing its work. And then there's the lack of historical records. The Egyptians documented so much about their engineering, from how they carved stone to how they transported materials. If they had really invented a method for making artificial stone, wouldn't there be some record of it? No ancient texts, no tools, no signs of large-scale stone casting have ever been found. So, the mainstream explanation is simple. The Black Pyramid was a failed experiment, not because of a lost technology, but because of the limitations of mud brick. The Egyptians may have been incredible engineers, but even they had to learn from trial and error. But does that mean we should dismiss alternative theories entirely? Not necessarily. Some modern experiments have shown that creating a geopolymer limestone similar to natural stone is possible with ancient techniques? Could it be that the Egyptians were testing something new but never perfected it? That's a question we may never fully answer. So, what's the final verdict? The Black Pyramid is a fascinating case of ancient innovation and failure. The mainstream view says its collapse was simply due to weak mud brick construction, while some researchers argue that the Egyptians may have experimented with an unknown material, possibly even an early form of concrete. Was this pyramid proof of a lost technology, or just a lesson in architectural miscalculation? For now, the mystery remains. But one thing is certain: the ancient Egyptians were master builders, constantly pushing the limits of engineering. And who knows? Maybe the secrets of their construction methods are still waiting to be uncovered.